Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. If it's your first time here, then simply welcome. Please consider liking and subscribing this video if you want to see more content like this in the future. This is the Kickstarter Weekly, and this is the edition for games that are completing their funding between August 16th and the 22nd. Now we only have one game this period. It's going to be a very short video for those of you who are only here to see the games on Kickstarter that are funding. For the rest of you who want to hear more talk about other games, this period I have 4 games in the games that I personally pledged since the last video section. I have 6 games in the acquired section and 2 games in the played section. So this video is actually going to be slanted a lot more towards talking about those games than the games on Kickstarter. But let's get through that first. It's very important. It's the only game of its kind, this video. So let's get to it. That game is Earthborne Rangers. And Earthborne Rangers will fund on August the 17th. Now, they had a minimum requested funding goal of $100,000. They're currently sitting at just under $350,000, about $349,000, which puts them at about 3.5 times their minimum requested funding. That's not that bad because they had such a high goal, and this is also a first-time publisher with a first-time Kickstarter. So I think all things said and done, they've actually done pretty well with that $350,000 figure they're currently sitting at. And they've still got the last 3 days to go as of now when I'm recording this, and that includes the last 24 hours, where generally about a third of the Kickstarter business is done in that last 24-hour period, generally. So this is a game for 1 to 4 players. It does not have a short play time, so sessions are supposed to take between 1 and 4 hours. From looking at this game, it should be classed somewhere in the medium section, I think. It's a little hard to tell right now because there's a lot of text and verbiage on all of the cards. I'm not quite sure how that's going to parse together when you're actually playing the game, but I think that the game is geared more towards a medium light experience. So that's what I'm going to go with for now, that it's a medium game, probably leaning towards the medium light. It could possibly be more of a medium heavy game, but for now, I think I'm going with medium light. And the risk on this one is going to be high, and that's simply because first time publisher, first time Kickstarter. Now, this is fairly unique Kickstarter. It is a deck building game, and it is set in an open world with a narrative campaign. What makes the game also unique is the fact that it's trying to be made in a very environmentally conscious way, so much so that they are trying to even produce some of the games regionally, locally, if they can. The way that it looks now is that they're going to end up using 2 different regional hubs and producing the games at those locations. But if they get more pledges, they could end up with more regional production hubs. Now, not only is that sort of environmental approach an important part of this campaign, it also seems to be a very important foundation for the publisher in general. And it even is a part of the theme of the game, sort of. It's nature driven. The card art, which is very nature focused, is very appealing. And what you're going to be doing in this game, more than, a fantasy game or a Dungeons and Dragons game where you're going out and you're just hunting and killing, this is going to be more about exploring nature. Now, if you've played any of the Sadler Brothers' recent games, things like Street Masters or Alter Quest, oftentimes they have players constructing a deck before they start the game, and that will be true of this game as well. Players are going to select a role card, an aspect, a specialization, a personality, and an outside interest. And that will give them, sort of in their player area, a role card, an aspect, and then a deck of 30 cards that are going to be constructed from decks based on those different things that they've chosen to define their character. So you've got 4 different things in there, I think, including the aspect, and those things will determine what cards go into the deck. So every time you play, there are different things that you can kind of switch up to get a different starting deck. And then you're going to go out in this world and you're going to be exploring, and you're going to be participating in a long sort of ongoing campaign, an ongoing narrative campaign. The designers on this one, there are 5. The first one is Andrew Fisher, and he has previously worked on Fallout Shelter, the board game, and the Rune Wars miniatures game. Another designer on this is Brooke Flugar-Leavitt, and Brooke has not actually designed any games before. They've developed quite a few things, but this is their first actual designing credit. The third designer on this project is Andrew Navarro. This is going to be Andrew's first published game, but he's also the main driving force of the publisher Earthborne Games, which is taking their name after this game, their first game. And then on board, you've also got the Sadler brothers. Now, Adam Sadler has previously worked on Descent Journeys in the Dark 2nd Edition, Star Wars The X-Wing Miniatures game The Force Awakens Core Set, and Warhammer Quest The Adventure Card Game. And Brady Sadler has previously worked on Star Wars X-Wing Miniature Games The Force Awakens Core Set, Street Masters, and Warhammer Quest The Adventure Card Game. The artist on this project is Evan Simonet, and he has previously worked on Arkham Horror the card game, Fallout, and Hoax. And as I mentioned, the publisher is Earthborne Games. This is a new publisher. The first three designers that I mentioned, Andrew Fisher, Brooke Flugar-Leavitt, and Andrew Navarro are all part of the publisher. Now, there's only 2 pledge levels for this one. So for $80, you can pledge for Earthborne Rangers, the core set. There's also a $150 pledge. That is the gameplay all in, and that will include the core set, plus the Legacy of the Ancients campaign expansion and the Ranger card doubler. So the Ranger card doubler is kind of like how if you've played Arkham Horror, where the game comes with enough cards for you to make one of any character but no crossovers, I think the same is true in this one. So you're going to be getting a lot of basic cards that you can use to make up several different decks. But I don't think that you can duplicate a lot of those cards. So the Ranger card doubler should allow you to make different sets of starter decks that use some of the same starting elements. Now, there are also several add-ons that aren't included in any of the pledge levels. For $30, there's a Ranger playmat, and that seems to be sort of a neoprene playmat that is a player board, essentially. I don't think there are player boards in this except if you buy these mats. So I suppose if you wanted to play it at 4 players, you need to get 4 of those mats at $30 each. For me specifically, I don't think the mats really add that much. They have a few areas on the mat that kind of show you where various cards are placed, but it feels like a very bare bones mat and not something that I feel the need to add to this collection. It's just $120 to add on 4 mats that don't really do too much. I don't find that personally a necessity, but if you'd like it, it's there. However, there's another neoprene mat for $40, and that is the Valley playmat. That is sort of going to be the main area of the game where you're playing and taking cards. So that personally, I can see adding that to the pledge and just having kind of the one main mat that everyone's playing off of. There's also an art and lore book for $30 if you like those kinds of things. And there are upgraded player tokens. So as players are taking their actions, they're going to be using cardboard tokens if you've got the base game. And you'll be placing those on different cards and elements of those cards to indicate that you've taken those kinds of actions. If you'd like to improve those, you can get a set of plastic tokens. It's called the Deluxe Energy Set, and that's $30. Now, there are only enough tokens in that set for 2 players. So if you're planning on playing this regularly with 4 players, and you want those upgraded components, you're going to need to get 2 sets of those. And again, all of those 4 add-ons, they're not part of any pledge level, at least right now. Sometimes publishers throw in a all-in at the last moment that kind of collects everything. So it's possible that that pledge level may appear before the campaign fully funds in the next few days. But if not, those 4 elements, if you want them, will need to be added on as add-ons. I mentioned at the top that this game will be funding on August 17th, and they are looking to deliver in June 2022. All right, so that is very quick. That is the only game that I am sort of recommending that people look at pledging in the next week. So let's move on to the pledge section. What did I actually pledge from the last video? If you remember, I profiled 5 games in the last video, and I actually pledged 4 of them. The only one that I didn't pledge was Bantam West, and I was very much on the fence with that one. I think if I hadn't backed so many Kickstarters this past month, this was a very big month for me. I think I backed 12 or 14 Kickstarters. It was kind of obscene. I had a very light month backing the month before, and I'm looking to have a light month in September, so I'm very happy that it's all kind of balancing out. But I think if I hadn't backed all those games that were funding in June, but I think if I hadn't been backing so many games that were funding during July, I probably would have backed Bantam West. For me, though, when I was looking at the gameplay of that one, I just saw a lot of card combat, some exploration, but perhaps not really enough mechanics to push me over that brink. Like I said, I think if I'd backed a lot less, I probably would have backed Bantam West anyway, just out of my curiosity and for the ability to look at the game and play it on this channel. I was backing so many other things that was the one game that did not make the cut. So I did back Oros. Oros is by a first-time publisher, so it's perhaps a little riskier than most. But I liked what they were doing, and I like the color of the game. It's sort of a tile placement game where you're using player actions that you take on your player mats, and you can't use the same actions. So you're going to have several sort of workers that you're moving around on your player mats to trigger various tile movement actions on the main board. And so you'll be pushing around tiles on the main board and then building things on them. It just looks like a very sharp game for a first-time publisher. I don't know if it'll be a keeper for me. It may be a little sort of too medium light, but it looks really good, and I really wanted to be able to highlight it and play it on the channel, so I backed that one. I also backed Architects of the West Kingdom, Works of Wonder. For me, that's just an automatic. I like Garpel games. I back all of the West Kingdom stuff. I backed all of the North Sea stuff back in the day, at least once I sort of caught up to it. I will probably always back Garpel Games Kickstarters. I actually didn't back Circadian's First Light. When that came out, I probably will pick up that game in a future campaign because I know that one's supposed to be another trilogy, and I assume, as with most of the Garpel stuff, when they do more campaigns for those successive games in that trilogy, you'll have the ability to get Circadian's First Light. Anyway, I want to get all things Garpel. I like the whole West Kingdom series. Architects actually is probably my least favorite of the three, but I still like it. It's a good game, and I want to see the new expansion. So I backed that with the collector's case, and I think the playmat. That was the pledge that I backed. It was just the new stuff. I also backed Divinus, which I enjoy Chronicles of Crime by Lucky Duck Games. I've enjoyed what I've played of Destiny so far. I'm kind of holding off playing it more because I want to eventually just stream the whole thing on our Twitch channel once it launches, hopefully before the end of this year. So I'm kind of holding on to Destinies for that. And Divinus feels to me like, in some ways, more Destinies, but in some ways the next kind of evolution of that gameplay engine. So it's more replayable than Destinies. There are ways both to reset the campaigns and replay them, so they're not as scripted as the scenarios in Destinies. They're more randomized, and once you've kind of gone through the campaigns as much as you like, you can do something called Eternal Mode, where you basically throw everything into the game and randomize it all. And then you can kind of just play again and again. I think it's, kind of like Charterstone once you finish the campaign of that, but in that game you were then stuck with the finished altered board from your campaign, which, depending on your campaign, could either make for great Charterstone one-offs on that board or terrible ones. It just depends how that board is constructed. I don't think that will be the case with the Eternal Mode in Divinus. It will just give you this randomized everything. I'm looking forward to playing that as well. Although I mostly am looking forward to playing those campaigns and streaming them at least once, and personally playing them multiple times, because everything that you back will have one recharge pack attached to it. So if you back the base game, you're going to get a recharge pack. If you back for the expansion, you will also get a recharge pack for that. So even before you add on more recharge packs, you've got at least 2 campaigns for every campaign that you backed. Looks cool. I like Destinies, and I think the things that I didn't like as much about Destinies, including the very limited replayability of it, are being evolved in this game. And I'm really looking forward to it. I think it should be great. I think it's probably more what I actually wanted from Destinies the first time around. And finally, I backed Pirates from Queen Games. However, I did not pledge for Pirates. I pledged only for the pledge level that was the Merlin Mega Box. I like some Stefan Feld games. I don't have that many of his games in my collection, so I'm looking to add more. And Merlin seems to be something that's sort of flown under the radar a bit. I think it had generally favorable response when it came out, but then it has had a couple of expansions, and every expansion, the response that I've seen is improved, more and more improved, to the point that now I think if you play with all the expansions of Merlin, what I've got from other outlets and from hearing what people think about it is that it's a really good game, and it's a game that maybe, like I said, is flying under the radar. Maybe people haven't noticed how good it is because those expansions were kind of released under the radar themselves. So I'm jumping at this as my chance to get this game, which it's hard to find everything, and it's hard to find that mega box, but here it is now offered again through this campaign. So I'm super excited. I think I'm gonna have a great time with the game, and I can't wait to play it once it comes. Looking forward to it. Now, the first game that I have acquired in this period is Arkham Horror, the card game, The Dunwich Legacy. I previously got the base game, and then I put together a collection of all of the one-offs. Part of my reason for doing that was I wasn't completely sold on Arkham Horror, the card game. There's several iterations of that game out. You've got Elder Sign, which is the same theme but dice rolling. You've got Arkham Horror, the board game. You've got Arkham Horror, the card game. You've also got Mansions of Madness, which is again the same theme with the same characters, just this time it's very app controlled. So there are all those things to choose from. And my experience with Arkham Horror, the card game, while I really liked it, it often feels controlled by the randomness, and like there is only so much that you can do. You are not really in control, I often feel, in what is happening. You are trying to reactively adjust to what is happening and eke out a victory. And it is often difficult and sometimes impossible just by lucks of the draw. So my original feeling was I'm just gonna get the one-offs, I'll be able to play those experiences, I'll get more time with the game, I'll see how I feel about it, and then I'll make a decision on buying a larger expansion. And I have played some of the one-offs, and what I found about those one-offs is some of them are actually designed to be played within other campaigns. So if you're trying to play them as a one-off, your character will not be strong enough, and you will just fail spectacularly. Also, I like the theme so much, and I like card game play, and I really wanted that sense of building up your deck over a series of scenarios. And you can't really get that experience with the one-offs, obviously, or even with the base game, because it's only 3 scenarios. You're using these starting heroes. There's not that much development that happens in that base game. So I finally went all in terms of backing the first expansion and all of those little packs. I think there are 6, maybe 5. No, I think it's 6 on top of the 2 scenarios that come in that. So I'm super excited about it. I really do like Arkham Horror, the card game, even though it is sometimes punishingly difficult. And I don't know if I will get to this campaign right away. Again, this is something I really want to feature later in the year once we eventually launch the Twitch channel and we're doing campaign games on that channel. But I love it. I'm glad to have it. I'm looking forward to playing it whenever I get the chance to play it and however I get the chance to play it. I've also acquired Brew, which is from Pandasaurus Games, and that is a card game and dice rolling game. It's got some very sharp looking components. Actually, I just watched the Dice Tower Foursquare's review of it. They had very mixed feelings about it. Chris Yee specifically was saying that the game is very mean in terms of how you place dice and you knock out other dice occasionally to get the majority that you need on those cards. So I'm going to know that going in, that it is sort of a very mean game that also has very cute, friendly, fun art. A little bit of a dichotomy there, I think, in the look of the game and maybe in some of the gameplay. I don't think that I will get to this one right away because I am still catching up on some 2020 games, and other games that I want to get videos out for that were from the first half of 2021. So Brew is more likely to get played and have a first impressions video made in a month or two once I sort of catch up with all the other work. It does look really cool, and I'm really looking forward to playing it. And I think it's going to be one of those games for me in my collection that will be in the sort of medium light card game, something that you can quickly teach and play that still has good decisions and a lot of riotous player interaction. And I think it will be, I don't want to say a gem in the medium light part of my collection because that's a assumption at this point, but I have a feeling it's going to be a game that I will not be selling and I will be very excited about having. I've also acquired Euphoria, How to Build a Better Dystopia. That is the version with the game trays included, and the expansion for that, Ignorance is Bliss. And I like a lot of the early Stegmaier games. I do own Tapestry, which I think is not great. I probably will be selling it. I think I might like to play it a couple times with my fiance just to let her have the experience of it before I do sell it. I know there is, I think, one expansion out for it and another one soon on the way. I don't have any of the expansions. I don't know whether I want to go down that road with Tapestry because I don't love the game to begin with. And I don't know if those expansions, I think, will redeem the game for me. I'm also not a huge fan of real-time games, so I did not even bother checking out Pendulum. And Red Rising, the most recent release, I backed. I did a first impressions video for that. You can see it if you'd like. It is a good game, but I think it is not as good as the game that actually inspired it, Fantasy Realms. So I will eventually be selling my collector's edition of Red Rising and purchasing Fantasy Realms when that game comes back into print. But for my 2 cents, Fantasy Realms is the far superior game, and they are very, very similar games. I don't think people need both of those in their collection. So I have found that my love for Stonemaier games is really more the earlier games. I still like Scythe, even though I've played it a lot, and I think in some ways I've sort of run the course, I think, in what that game can offer me, but I'd still play it again. I really, really like Viticulture. I actually have a copy of it on the way. But I have played it a few times and I really like that. And I think that's my favorite Jamie Stegmaier design. I like it so much, I even prefer it to Divinus Deluxe, which is saying a lot because Vitalis Yarda is my favorite designer. So I seem to gravitate towards the earlier Stegmaier stuff. And I also really like Charterstone. I really like Charterstone. So I seem to gravitate towards the earlier Stegmaier games. And I've heard really, really good things about Euphoria. It's been on my list of games to play or try to acquire for a very long time. And it felt like the right time now. So that has come in along with the expansion. I also picked up Hadrian's Wall, which is a roll and write that has been fairly recently published from Garphill Games. I was looking at the Dice Tower review for that one, and Tom was just so flummoxed by the game that it was very entertaining. I think in the very beginning of his review, he was saying, you do need to realize if you like interaction with other human players, Hadrian's Wall is probably not for you. And then later in the same review, he said, I enjoy this game, but I don't know what I'm doing. And then at the end, he was talking about the game, saying that it's not, even though it's a roll and write, it's not an appetizer. He said, but it's a main course, and I really enjoyed it. So he obviously really liked the game, even though there is a lot going on with Hadrian's Wall. In fact, Tom said that Hadrian's Wall is the most complex roll and write that he has played. I think maybe Tom has not played Roman Roll then, because Roman Roll is more complex from what I've seen than Hadrian's Wall. However, Roman Roll is really more of a standard Euro using roll and write mechanics. So it feels like a Euro. It feels like the things that you're doing in Roman Roll could have been accomplished using trackers and cubes and things like that instead of using roll and write, implements. Whereas this game is just a big roll and write, but instead of the sheet that you would normally fill out in a roll and write, you've got 2 sheets that are each 2 to 3 times the size of a normal roll and write sheet. So you have this enormous thing that is like 4 to 6 times the sheetage of a normal roll and write sheet. And you get a certain number of wooden kind of meeples every turn based on a card that you draw. And then you're going to be using those different meeples to take actions. And as you take actions on your player board and you're Xing things out, you'll get a lot more meeples. So you may get, let's say, 6 different I'm not sure if they're really called meeples in the game, but I'm just going to continue calling them that in this video. So you'll get a certain number of these meeples, and then as you do actions, you'll sort of get more in. So if you start with maybe 6, you may end up acquiring 6 more while you're taking actions, and you'll actually kind of get to take 12 actions on your board doing different things. So these turns chain together. They create kind of very long turns. But the other thing is, you do have this little social element at the beginning of every round where you are drafting cards and some resources. But after that, everything is very, 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 very heads down. So you are literally just kind of filling out sheets, and everyone's doing it on their own time. And then when they're done with the round, they'll flip the main player board over, they'll go to the next round, they'll do the little card drafting, and then it'll be back kind of heads down. So I don't mind that. I like that kind of thing. I think, like Tom, I'm going to enjoy it because the process of it feels so fun. However, it does seem like a lot of accounting. Like, you're basically just filling out this spreadsheet and you're doing it by yourself, even when you're playing multiplayer. So if that is something I think that players would not like, that should be a big red flag about Hadrian's Wall. But for players who don't mind multiplayer solitaire and are going to be willing to give this most multiplayer solitaire a chance, it seems like a lot of fun with a lot going on in a chaotic, more is more is chaos is more kind of way. But it looks fun. I'm looking forward to that. And like Brew, I probably won't get to that for the purposes of the channel for another month or two while I just catch up on older stuff. And finally, the last game that I got in is Summoner's War 2nd edition. It's the master set. This is a game that 5 years ago, when I was really starting to get more heavily involved in board gaming, I knew of Summoner's War, and I had mixed feelings about it. It seemed like chess using cards, which is curious and I like, but I also saw a lot of pictures of these big player mats with these cards kind of going on and in strategic positions, and it just seemed very big and kind of clunky to me. So while I was intrigued by it, I never picked it up, and then of course, it mostly went out of print. You just didn't see it around that much. And now they've revived it with a new edition. And so I felt this is my time to grab this game, see if the gameplay, which I think that I will like, is enough to sort of grab me and hold on despite any, I don't know, weird misgivings that I have about the way it plays on the table and the way it uses these giant cards and moves them around. I mean, I have a feeling once I get into it and I play it, it's not going to bother me. And it's one of those games that has had a very good reputation for a while, and it just felt like a hole that I needed to sort of fill in my gaming experience. So I am very much looking forward to that, but that probably falls into the same category with Brew and Hadrian's Wall, which is that a month or two, I'll be catching up with that one after I kind of catch up with other stuff. That finally brings us to the played games section. And I've only really had 2 played games this period. The first is Cosmic Frog. And Cosmic Frog is a crazy game in a good way. So players are playing these weird cosmic giant space frogs that are existing somewhere in the universe. And there's a giant kind of landmass. And so players will be moving around this landmass with their frogs each turn. They have certain actions that they can take, which includes movement. So you're going to be walking around this mass, jumping and leaping, possibly attacking other players, possibly kicking them off this landmass into the aether. And if you kick them while they're in the aether, or even very hard into the aether, they'll go through the aether into other dimensions where you can then steal their goods from their vault. Now, their vault is something that they put their goods into after they have collected them in their frog gullet, their cosmic frog space gullet, and then jumped off the landmass into the aether, regurgitated up their goods into their personal vault. It's a weird game, man, but it is very cool. I am normally not somebody that likes high conflict games, but I do in this one, I think because it's so weird. It just feels like the oddness of the game and the fact that you are giant cosmic frogs in multiple dimensions, eating land masses and kicking other frogs. How can I not love that, combat included? So I played it. I really liked it. It's just weird, man. It is weird. And it is not that heavy a game once you know it. There's a little bit of a barrier to entry just because the teach isn't super simple, I think, when you're learning the game, but if you know the game, you can teach it to other people fairly easily. And it even comes with a neoprene mat in the retail box and miniatures for your cosmic frogs. So it is a very nice package out of the box for a retail game. And it's just crazy looking. And that's a lot of fun. And I probably won't end up with too many high conflict games in my collection. Those aren't games that Kristen and I really love to play, but I think this one will be there. This will be one of the few. And definitely the theme and the gameplay, the very unique gameplay, has a lot to do with it. Players, to score points, are accumulating this landmass. They're eating it. They're regurgitating it into their vaults, and then how they place it in their vaults will score them points at the end of the game. They're trying to create lines. They also can sort of create little sandwiches of landmass on their player boards with one kind of landmass, a more valuable kind of landmass of the same color sandwiched in the middle, and then a third tile of the same kind that's on the bottom. So it literally is like a sandwich, all of the same color. If you have those, that will allow you to recycle a resource called oomph every round, and getting more oomph, having a passive income source of oomph is very helpful, because oomph is what allows you to take additional actions and supplementary actions to make them more powerful. So the more you can build up your engine to give you more and more oomph, that's going to lead you to better and more powerful turns. However, when you're constructing those little, I'll call them sandwiches, on the player board, that may affect your ability to create the lines for endgame scoring. So you're playing that balance where you're like, do I do the thing that's going to allow me to build up my engine, or do I go for points? You're drop kicking other cosmic frogs at the end of the universe. Who can't love it? So very much enjoyed my play of that. I'm going to try to get in another play before I do my first impressions video, and I will likely be shooting that video next week. I also played Forgotten Waters, which is a co-op game from Plaid Hat in the Crossroads series. So it's the same series that has given us games like Dead of Winter and Gen 7. Is it called Gen 7? Gen 13? Gen something. I'm getting it confused in my head with that old Image comic. But Gen something, which is the one on the spacecraft. So this is a Crossroads game. It is pirate themed, and it heavily uses an app. So it's kind of a storytelling narrative game. In general, that is really all you're doing. You're going to set a timer. Players will choose actions on a page in a booklet. And then, assuming that they don't run over time, there won't be a penalty. And then you'll just go through and you'll execute those actions. And when you're done with that, you may move on to another page. You may stay on the current page. And then at the same time, players are also responsible for a series of sort of bookkeeping mechanisms. There are 7 of them. So if you're playing with 7 players, which you can, every player will be responsible for one of those mechanisms. If you're playing with less players, like we played with 3, we had 2 of us were responsible for 2 of the mechanisms, and 1 was responsible for 3. It's not that much. It's just kind of little things that you keep track of in terms of things like the number of the crew, the discontent of the crew, your supplies, your cannons, things like that. So everyone's doing a little bit of the bookkeeping and the upkeep with these devices, these mechanisms that do that. And then they're playing this narrative cooperative game, and it's a lot of fun. It reminds me of Sleeping Gods, but Sleeping Gods is all about doing these kind of long form campaigns, and you need to do multiple campaigns to complete all the achievements in Sleeping Gods. It feels very much like a video game when you're trying to platinum it, and you need to go through and do the story mode multiple times to be able to do everything. That's the way Sleeping Gods plays. Forgotten Waters is not that involved or heavy. So there is a series of scenarios, and you can play them in order. The first one is an intro scenario, which is what we're playing. However, The scenarios in Forgotten Waters are much more replayable than Sleeping Gods. Sleeping Gods gets its replayability from all the things that you're going to want to do and the other things that you're going to want to explore. But once you kind of figure out something or have an experience, you don't really need to go back and repeat that in Sleeping Gods. In Forgotten Waters, you're just going to play your campaign, and it'll be randomized, and when you finish it, you can play another campaign, and it'll be randomized, and it'll be different every time, using the various, tiles and story elements that may come up in your play. There is also a DLC, I think it's $10, which just has one scenario, so it's a standalone. And that scenario, I think, is designed to be played in an hour or two, whereas the other scenarios in Forgotten Waters take, I think, 1 or 2 to 4 hours, so they can get longer. But this is a game that is aimed more at the medium light crowd, the storytelling crowd, families, casual gamers, and it's a lot of fun. It's got a very kind of ridiculous, cheeky sense of humor, kind of on the level of like the Monkey Island games, those PC computer games. It's good. And it's something that I don't think I want to play anymore right now because I want to, again, save it for the Twitch channel. I think it's a lot of fun and I want to do it on live stream, include a few friends, and just have an audience be able to watch it. But the game is a lot of fun, and I would completely recommend it to those of you who like that kind of thing. So that almost concludes the video, except for my little what's coming section that I'm doing at the end. This last week was pretty terrible for us personally. We were sort of finishing up with our young 6-month-old puppy needing 3 different kinds of medication, so that had taken up some time. And then I got invited to a function at a friend's house, a couple of friends I hadn't seen in 20 years, this last weekend. And when we went to do that, one of our cars wasn't working, our main car, our Prius. The 12-volt battery was essentially dead. So we couldn't drive that. So I tried to take our backup car, our Corolla, and that's having problems with a belt. It was squealing the whole time. We can't drive that anymore. We need to get that car fixed as well. In fact, it may cost so much to fix that car that we may just sell it and have one car for a period of time until we decide to get a second car. But the first car we couldn't drive either, and I needed to call AAA to get the battery replaced, and then it turned out that they don't have that battery. They're all nationally Toyota is on a 2.5 month back order for these batteries, which means dealers couldn't do anything for me for 2.5 months. We were able to locate a battery through NOCO, and we went to the garage that was going to install it. NOCO sent the wrong battery. We had to come back another day to do it, and that took some time. So a lot of my week just got eroded. Also, the website that I run can take up to 8 hours of work a day. So there was just a lot of time this week that went towards other things, and I wasn't really able to keep up with the video production. I did get my June Games of the Month video done. That is up. You can watch that right now. This video I'm shooting, I'm planning on getting this edited and posted today. My Kanban EV video, which I've kind of been editing for a couple of weeks now, on and off, should be done and up this weekend at some point, just depending on what else happens this weekend. And then next week, you will definitely see videos for Embarcadero, Kemet Blood and Sand, and Imperium Legends. Those will hit next week. And the next videos I'll be doing after that will be Cosmic Frog. I won't be doing a video for Forgotten Waters because that game is already about a year old, and I don't want to play it anymore until we do our stream, so I don't really feel that I can fairly do a first impressions video on it. But you will see Cosmic Frog, and then after that, probably the week after, you will start to see videos for maybe Beyond the Sun, possibly something like Coffee Traders, maybe Shawson. So that's kind of like next week and moving beyond. That's what's coming. Thank you everybody for watching this video. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking about Earthborne Rangers. I think it's a cool looking game. I'm looking to back this one, but it is unique, kind of what they're doing environmentally and the way their ethos also seems to be reflected in the theme of the game. And I'm curious to play that open world narrative exploration and see how that works and how that's structured within this game universe, because it feels a little bit different than everything else out there. So let me know what you think about that game, if that's something you're considering backing, if that appeals to you. Thank you very much for watching all of this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. That really helps me to grow the channel. And I will see you soon in my next video, which should be that Kanban EV first impressions video. And you should see that hopefully over this weekend. Happy gaming. I hope you have something fun planned for this weekend, and take care. I'll see you soon.